The Korean billionaire fired his Afro maid, then discovered she owned his company. The boardroom doors slammed open at 8:17 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Gangnam. Rain hammered the glass walls of the 48th floor of Han Enterprises Tower, but the Real storm stood inside. "You're fired," Kang Ji-hoon said, voice cold as the marble under his shoes. He didn't look up from the tablet in his hand. "Clear your locker. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes." Amara Okonkwo, the cleaning staff's newest hire, froze mid-wipe of the long conference table. Her dark hands, still holding the microfiber cloth, trembled once. The faint scent of lemon cleaner mixed with the expensive cologne that always followed the CEO. She had only been here 3 weeks. "Mr. Kang," she said carefully, Nigerian accent soft but steady. "I clean the executive floor like every other morning. Is there a problem with my work?" Ji-hoon finally lifted his eyes. They were sharp, dark, the kind that had closed billion-won deals and silenced entire boardrooms. At 32, he looked carved from the same steel as the building he owned. "The problem is you. You were in the restricted archive room last night. Cameras caught you." Amara's pulse jumped. She had been there. She had needed to see one specific file. But she kept her face calm. "I was looking for extra supplies. The storage closet was locked." "Lie better," he said. "Or don't bother. You're done." He turned away as if she had already vanished. 2 security guards appeared. Amara set the cloth down, removed the small ID badge from her navy uniform, and placed it on the table. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply walked out into the rain with her worn backpack and the quiet knowledge that the man who had just dismissed her like trash had no idea who she really was. 3 weeks earlier, Amara had arrived in Seoul with a single suitcase and a promise she had made to her late father in Lagos. "Find the truth about the company that took everything from us," he had whispered in the hospital bed. "Then decide what to do with it." She was 28, the only daughter of a Nigerian engineer who had once partnered with a Korean firm that later collapsed under mysterious circumstances. The firm's assets had been absorbed by Han Enterprises years ago. Amara had spent the last decade studying business at night, while working cleaning jobs by day, saving every one, learning Korean until she dreamed in it. When the cleaning agency offered a temporary contract at Han Tower, she took it without hesitation. She needed access. She needed answers. She never expected the answers to come with a man whose face made her forget how to breathe. Their first real encounter had not been in the boardroom. It had been at 11:40 p.m. on her second night, when she found him still at his desk, jacket discarded, tie loosened, staring at a screen full of red numbers. The city glittered below like a circuit board. "You're still here," he said without looking up. "Most of the night staff leaves by 11. "I finish what I start," Amara answered, emptying the trash bin near his desk. He glanced at her then, really looked. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun under the regulation cap, but a few tight coils had escaped. Her eyes were the color of dark coffee, and they did not lower when his met them. "You're not Korean," he said. "Nigerian. And you're working the night shift in my building. Your cleaning company hired me. I clean." A faint, almost unwilling smile touched his mouth. "Most people in this building try to impress me. You sound like you'd rather throw the bin at my head." "I might," she said, and for half a second the tension between them felt less like employer and employee and more like 2 people standing on opposite sides of a thin wire. He returned to his screen. "Don't stay too late. The elevators lock at midnight for non-executive floors." She left, but she remembered the way his voice softened for one sentence, and the way her own chest tightened when he spoke. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Amara cleaned the executive floors with quiet efficiency. Ji-hoon worked late almost every night. Sometimes he left notes on the conference table. "Coffee machine on 48 needs descaling." Sometimes he simply nodded when she entered. Once, after a particularly brutal board meeting, he found her wiping fingerprints from the glass wall and said, "You have steady hands. Most people shake when they're near me." I don't scare easily, she replied. That's either brave or stupid. Maybe both. He almost smiled again. But Seoul was not kind to quiet feelings. Ji-hoon's mother, Madame Kong, arrived one afternoon unannounced, bringing with her the full weight of old chaebol expectations. She was elegant in a pale hanbok-style suit, pearls at her throat, and her eyes missed nothing. Ji-hoon, she said in the private lounge. The Young family is still waiting for your answer. Their daughter is suitable. The merger would secure the southern factories. Ji-hoon stared out at the Han River. I am not marrying for factories. You will marry for the family, she answered. Your father built this company with blood and nights, without sleep. Do not throw it away for some temporary freedom. Amara was polishing the hallway floor outside the open door. She heard every word. She kept polishing. That same week, a jealous former secretary named Yuna began watching Amara with open hostility. Yuna had once hoped to become more than staff. When she saw the CEO linger near the cleaning cart longer than necessary, she filed a quiet complaint about unauthorized access and foreign staff overstepping. It was enough. Combined with the archive room footage, it gave Ji-hoon the reason he needed, or thought he needed, to cut the strange tension before it grew roots. So he fired her in the rain. Amara walked through Gangnam with wet shoes and a phone that still had one useful contact. That night she sat in a tiny Gashawon room near Hongdae, the kind with a bed that folded against the wall and a window that looked onto brick. She opened her laptop and pulled up the encrypted folder her father had left her. Inside were old contracts, bank records, and one name that had always haunted her, Han Jae-suk, Ji-hoon's late father. The documents showed that 20 years earlier, Amara's father had invented a critical battery technology while working under contract for a small Korean firm. When the firm ran into debt, Han Enterprises acquired it. The technology was quietly transferred. The original inventor received almost nothing. The patents that later made Han Enterprises a global giant in electric vehicle components had Nigerian fingerprints all over them. Amara's father had died believing the law would never help him. He had left her the proof and one instruction. If you ever get close enough, decide whether justice or peace matters more. She decided both did. 2 days after her firing, Amara walked into the law firm of a quiet Korean-Nigerian attorney she had found through careful research. She presented the documents. The attorney's eyes widened. These are real, he said. If this goes public, Han Enterprises' valuation could drop by 30% overnight. The board would demand blood. I don't want blood, Amara said. I want recognition for my father's work. And I want the shares that should have been his. The attorney leaned back. You understand what you're asking? You would become one of the largest minority shareholders. Possibly the largest if certain dormant trusts are activated. Amara nodded once. File the claim. While lawyers moved in silence, Ji-hoon discovered that silence was the loudest thing in his building. The executive floors felt emptier. The lemon cleaner scent was gone. He found himself looking for a figure who no longer appeared at the edge of his vision. He told himself it was irritation. He told himself he had done the right thing. Then the first anonymous package arrived at his private residence in Cheongdam-dong. Inside was a single page, a photocopy of an old patent application with his father's signature and a second signature that did not belong to any Korean engineer. Beneath it, a note in neat English. Asterisk some ghosts clean floors. Some own the building. Asterisk. Ji-hoon's hands tightened. He called his head of security. Find the woman I fired. Amara Okonkwo. Now. They found her 3 days later outside a small Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon, eating jollof rice from a paper plate with a plastic fork. When the black sedan stopped and Ji-hoon stepped out, the street noise seemed to thin. You left this, he said, holding up the photocopy. Amara set the fork down. I left many things, including my pride on your marble floor. What do you want? What was taken from my father? Nothing more. Nothing less. He studied her face in the afternoon light. You're not a maid. I was a maid for 3 weeks. It was honest work. Better than some boardrooms I've seen. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Come with me. She did not move. Why? Because if what you sin is real, we have a problem larger than either of us. And because I fired you without knowing the full truth. That was a mistake. Amara stood. Mistakes are expensive in this city. They rode in silence to a private conference room at a discreet hotel overlooking the river. Lawyers from both sides were already waiting. The documents were spread across the table like a map of 2 decades of quiet theft. Ji-hoon read every page. When he finished, the room felt colder. My father was many things, he said slowly. A visionary. A hard man. Apparently, also a thief. Amara's voice stayed even. He took the technology. He built an empire on it. My father died with nothing but pride and a folder of papers. Ji-hoon's mother arrived an hour later, summoned by the legal team. When she understood the claim, her face went white, then hard. This cannot stand, she said. The company is the family's blood. We will fight it. We will not, Ji-hoon answered. If the claim is true, we settle. Quietly. Fairly. Or we lose everything in public. Madame Kong looked at Amara as if seeing a threat that had learned how to wear a cleaning uniform. You planned this. You came into our building like a rat. I came as a woman who needed answers, Amara said. Your son gave me the door. Your cameras gave me the exit. The papers gave me the rest. The negotiations lasted 4 days. Amara refused the first 3 offers. On the 4th, Ji-hoon walked into the room alone after midnight and sat across from her. The board will accept a 15% stake and a permanent seat for your father's name on the technology division, he said. In return, you sign a non-disclosure and drop any further claims. If you're loving this, go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more. Amara studied him. Why are you doing this? Because the truth is the truth. And because every time I walk into that building I still look for you by the glass wall. The words hung between them, heavier than any contract. She signed. The public announcement was careful. Han Enterprises welcomed a strategic partner whose family's foundational research had contributed to early innovation. Amara's name appeared once in the press release. The rest was silence. She did not return as staff. She returned as a shareholder with an office 2 floors below the CEO's. The first time she stepped out of the elevator in a simple black dress instead of a uniform, the entire executive floor went quiet. Yuna resigned the next week. Madame Kong did not speak to Amara for a month. Then, one evening, she appeared at Amara's new apartment in Hanamdong carrying a box of homemade kimchi and a single white envelope. My husband was wrong, she said without preamble. I protected the company because I thought that was love. Perhaps it was only fear. My son looks at you the way he used to look at the sky when he was a boy, before the sky became a thing to own. Amara opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph of a young Ji-hoon standing beside an old laboratory bench, smiling at a prototype battery. On the back, in faded ink, for the ones who build what others claim. Thank you, Amara said. Madame Kong nodded once and left. Romance, when it finally arrived, did not arrive with fireworks. It arrived on a rainy Thursday when Amara stayed late reviewing supply chain reports and found Ji-hoon in the pantry making instant coffee because the machine was broken. You're still here, he said, echoing the words from their first night. I finish what I start. He handed her a mug. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. I fired you, he said quietly. You did. I was afraid of what you made me feel. I know. He set the mug down. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Amara looked at him for a long time. Then she stepped closer, close enough to smell the same cologne that had once mixed with lemon cleaner, and kissed him. It was not soft. It was not careful. It was the kind of kiss that answered every unanswered question from the archive room, and the rainy boardroom, and the river hotel. When they broke apart, the city lights outside the window seemed brighter. They kept the relationship private for months. There were still board members who whispered about foreign influence. There were still nights when Amara woke remembering her father's hospital bed. There were still moments when Ji-hoon stood in front of the old portrait of his father and wondered how much of the empire was built on stolen light. But they chose each other anyway. 1 year after the firing, Han Enterprises held its annual foundation dinner at a restored Hanok complex near Bukchon. Amara wore a deep green gown that made her skin glow under the lanterns. Ji-hoon stood beside her in a dark suit and introduced her not as a partner, not as a shareholder, but simply as the woman who had cleaned his floors and then cleaned his conscience. Madame Kong raised her glass. To the ones who see what others refuse to see. Later that night, under a sky full of quiet stars, Ji-hoon took Amara's hand and walked her to the edge of the garden where the city noise faded. "I have one more thing to give you," he said. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was not a ring. It was a key, an old brass key that had once belonged to the laboratory where her father had worked. "I bought the building," he said. "We will turn it into a research center in both our names. Nigerian and Korean. Equal." Amara's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "You didn't have to. I wanted to. The same way I want to wake up every morning knowing the woman who once held a cleaning cloth now holds half my future." She closed her fingers around the key. "Then ask me properly." He did. Under the lantern light, with the scent of rain still in the air and the city breathing around them, Kang Ji-hoon asked Amara Okonkwo to marry him. She said yes before the question fully left his mouth. Years later, when people asked how a Nigerian woman ended up co-owning one of Korea's largest technology empires, Amara would smile and say, "I started by cleaning the floors. Then I cleaned the truth. The rest was just love doing the hard work." And somewhere in the quiet of a Seoul night, a former billionaire who once fired the woman he would marry still kept a small lemon-scented cloth in the bottom drawer of his desk, just to remember how everything began.